Welcome back to the Maven Show. This is your host Rohit. Today we have Drew, the founder and CEO at Digital Drew and marketing expert. Thank you, Drew, for getting into the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rohit.
Would you just like to give a quick intro of yourself first, how you got started with the marketing and so on?
Sure. So I really started working for large ad agencies in New York. I worked across really large accounts like Samsung and Johnson & Johnson, and then I went off on my own over 3 years ago in 2017, and then really started doing my own projects and building my own agency really from the ground up. So getting to work across a huge variety of industries, everything from e-commerce to lead generation to SaaS to service-based businesses, and really getting to work across a huge range of budgets as well. So getting that experience not only in large clients, but smaller budgets as well, of clients that sometimes spend like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month. So having that good range of terms of it's great when you have $500,000 a month to spend, but then also smaller budgets as well, and how to still get results and a good ROI on that type of ad spend.
What would you like to explain, like the difference between the mid-sized companies and the large-size accounts of the companies and the companies which is getting started as a startup?
Yeah. So whether you're small, medium, or large, like conversion tracking is really important. So you want to set up conversions so that the algorithm inside the ads can learn who to target. So like you want to, for instance, optimize towards purchases, including conversion values or lead forms or calls. And one of the biggest differences is with a large account, there's much more AI to leverage. So it's a lot easier to get conversions because you're spending a lot more. So that is definitely one of the biggest differences that I find from a smaller account to a medium or larger, is that you need to be very, very efficient with what you do. I mean, obviously, in any case, you want to be efficient, but it's like one click could end up eating so much of your budget, where you need to be very, very careful on a small budget, where you want to maybe have less keywords, you want to even shrink the targeting a little bit more because you have less for the algorithm to work with and less for the algorithm's machine to be efficient with. So like, for example, adding additional negatives, maybe in an ad group, for example, instead of having 50 relevant keywords, you might have 20 in a small business. So it's just, those are different tweaks and different things to think about and consider when you're working with budgets of different sizes.
And budget is something which like enterprises take care, like
I mean, I always set my minimums, or I really try and push people as like 1,500 or $50 a day as the minimum, just because Google's old philosophy used to be like, oh, start a campaign at $5 a day. And it's like, yes, you could run a campaign at $5 a day, but you're probably going to get no conversions of it and then end up wasting your budget. So it's better to spend a little bit more and then be able to learn faster and then be able to scale efficiently. So it's like, if you spend, and there's sometimes where someone's like, I only have $30 a day, which is like $1,000 a month. And then I'm like, I'm willing to consider it based on the industry. So something to consider too is like, what is the cost per click? So for example, I use a tool called SEMrush, where I'm able to see what the estimated cost per click is going to be. And basically, if I can see like, all right, it's going to cost $1 or $2 on average per click, I might be more inclined to say, all right, you could start out with a little bit lower, knowing that the machine learning can still learn with it. But it's like, for example, if you're in, say, law, for example, and the average CPC is going to be $10, $15, like you really need to have a higher minimum, because if you're going to spend $30 a day and you're going to get 2 clicks a day, the algorithm's not going to be able to learn on that. And that's where it's important to set those minimums and like work with a minimum budget, because every budget is not going to work.
There's a difference between the companies who already have done the bunch of campaigns, and there's a difference between the companies who is just getting started in data.
A new company, like, give it at least 2 to 3 months to really test it out, just because if you're working with no data from scratch, I mean, I always have rules where I set up the conversion tracking before, I test it, I do the keyword research, I write the ad copy with good to excellent ad strength score ads, but it's like you still need time to learn. And it's always great when a campaign just takes off and it learns and it does great right away. But sometimes you need to see like, all right, this keyword is working, this keyword isn't. Maybe the landing page isn't working. So there's times where you're like, I love this landing page, it looks great. And if people don't trust the landing page, if there's something missing from the language, like it sometimes takes longer. And I think people are like, I want this to work in 1 to 2 weeks, and I just want to see leads tomorrow. And it's like, that's not always the case, especially when you're a small business. When you've been running ads for a while, what I usually do is if you have existing campaigns, I audit them. So like I create a Google Doc or a Word doc where I really say, here's what I recommend changing in terms of settings and keywords and ad copy. And then based on those settings, then I go ahead and then make those changes and kind of implement strategically based on what's already working.
How to make a best landing page for compelling, like, like a compelling landing page for the maximum conversions, because landing page is something which should be the only thing to drive leads, to drive to product sales and so on. So what words do you have for that?
Yep. So on landing pages, one is having a really good description of like what you're offering. So making it very, very clear, this is what I sell, this is the service that I offer, making sure that that's very clear, having good product imagery and videos of what you're offering is important too. So no matter what industry you're in, whether it's a service or a product or anything like that, having your own photos that aren't stock photos that really demonstrate the work that you do is really important. Having clear like call to action like forms or phone numbers that are clickable or easy way for someone to get in contact you or purchase on that page is really important as well. And then also being able to build that trust by having reviews, what companies you've worked for, PR and press that you've had, building that trust. So having all of those elements are really important to help a page convert. Or like, for example, there's times where I get a landing page and it looks great, and then I'm not able to track the forms on it because it's built on a third-party tool and there's no thank you pages. So it's like making sure that it's trackable. What you're doing is also a really important factor when you're building out a landing page.
How creative stuff works in the agencies and how agencies should price the creative services or creative things like.
So creative is really important, especially like when you're running Performance Max now, like the maximum that you need is like 20 images. So what I say to do is just test all the different sizes. Like there's 3 different sizes. Do some images with text overlay, some images without text overlay. Try and keep a consistent brand. So it's like if you have brand colors and fonts and things like that, make sure to consistently use that so that way you build your brand, but you'll be able to see what's working and what isn't. So being able to analyze, all right, this image is getting the best click-through rate, so I'm going to make more images that look like this. So that is my approach to creative and what I recommend doing, and just being able to use the numbers and leverage the data of what's converting to make more of what's working. But especially in the beginning, you just need to test a lot of different things.
And I mean, creative takes time.
So it's like you might think that this is going to be the winning creative, or you're really in love with a piece of creative, and then the audience just doesn't like it and it just doesn't convert. And it's kind of like you can't take that personally. And it's like if you don't listen to what the data is telling you and you ignore it, then you're not going to improve. Like it's great to put your own spin on it. It's great to have your own hunches, especially when you have no data. But once you're in the testing phase, like you need to listen to what your audience is saying.
How to launch a successful PPC campaigns, or.
I mean, there's not one thing. I mean, it's setting up the tracking. It's looking at the data as we talked about. It's having a good landing page. and then also having good creative, and then for search, doing the right keyword research and like analyzing what keywords are working. So it's a combination of doing all of those things. And sometimes it's challenging because if one of those things doesn't go right, it all doesn't go right. So it's like all those things need to work together, and you need to work to be able to do all of those things. And it's like, if you can't set up conversion tracking on your own, or you're not a creative agency and you don't have creative, that's where you need to outsource. So you outsource to someone like Rohit or myself to
Yeah.
really help you with certain one of those things or all of those things, because it just takes one of them to not go right for the ads to go wrong.
Awesome. Any best tips for anyone who is getting into the marketing for their business? What should they choose if they have a small budget, and what should they choose if they have a big budget?
Yeah. So, like I said, the landing page, as we talked about, is really important. So making sure the landing page is the best it could possibly be is my first advice. So if you're not 100% confident with your landing page, and like I said, with testing, you might find out that it's not good anyway or needs improvement, but at least making sure that your landing page, you're putting your best foot forward and feel like people are really going to like this, people are going to convert on this. You did all the things that I discussed about, like having good conversion pages and having trust and reviews and listing your product really well on the page. So doing all of those things, and then it all comes to scaling. So every big business comes from somewhere. So it's like, even if you're super big, my advice is still to continue to be testing and continue to use the data to leverage what's working to continue to do more of it. And say you're getting the conversion rate that you really like as a large company, you have to spend more money. Like if you're $1 million company and you're trying to be a $5 million company and Google Ads is working, don't be afraid to scale your budgets. I'm not saying to go from spending 100,000 a month to 500,000, but what I recommend is increasing your budget 20%, then spend that 20% more, make sure your conversion rate holds, and then really continue to scale more after that. So you can continuously spend more money as long as you're seeing results, but it's an algorithm that you want to make sure the machine learning holds.
Well, that's all. Thank you so much, Drew, for getting into the show. It was good to have you in.
Thank you for having me, Rohit. It was great being on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's all. Thank you so much for having into the show, man.
Thank you. All right. Bye.